Sandra. Thanks for joining me in my kitchen. Today I'm going to be making Bavarian pretzels, also a Ball Park pretzel. These are those chewy, warm pretzels that you pull apart and either dip in mustard or put some butter on. So yummy. We're having chili for dinner tonight, and I think homemade pretzels are always a great addition to that for a nice treat with dinner. My husband Chris, these are his favorite, so I make pretzels quite often. He has decided that pretty much any family event or holiday should have a Bavarian pretzel with it, so it's a common thing at our house for a batch of pretzels to get made. I've used tons of different recipes over the years. I've kind of fallen on this one for when I don't have so many people around. As you know, I have a large family, so sometimes I need to make a couple dozen pretzels, but tonight there's only a few of us at home, so I'm just gonna make a batch of 6 pretzels, which is actually a really nice number. I'm going to put a link in the bio for the recipe that I'm using. I found it on All Recipes. I do make a couple modifications to this recipe because I'm going to be using quick rise yeast instead of instant yeast. But I think if you follow that recipe, you'll be fine, for sure. And if you want to make the same modifications I have, they're really pretty simple. So I'm going to use my standard KitchenAid mixer to get me going. So in my large bowl, I am going to put together a cup of flour. This recipe only uses 3 cups in total, so that's not that much. A cup of flour. My sugar, how much sugar do I need? 1 teaspoon of sugar, which isn't very much, really. Okay. And then I'm going to add my yeast. Now, it does call for a tablespoon of yeast, which is essentially a package. So if you have packages of yeast, it's about the same. Actually, that's not true. A package is 2 1/4 teaspoons, and a tablespoon is like 4 teaspoons plus a little bit. So a tablespoon is like 2 packages of yeast. So just to give you that comparative. Now remember, this is quick rise yeast, but you can use traditional. I'm going to give that a little mix in the bowl before I add the liquid. The thing you do have to keep in mind with your water when working with instant yeast is that it needs to be between 110 and 120 degrees for the yeast to work properly. If it's too hot, you'll kill the yeast. If it's not hot enough, you won't activate it. So it is important that you find that your water is quite warm, but not too hot to touch. If you're not sure, please just grab a kitchen thermometer and just double check your temperature. Okay, and this water is sitting right around 110 degrees. So we're gonna go ahead and add that in. Just gonna set my flour aside here, turn on my mixer on slow. So adding in the water. Now you're gonna see as this is mixing that it's really a liquidy solution. That's okay, I want that yeast to get mixed in nice and evenly with the water and the flour. And then, wrong way. And then I'm gonna worry about adding the rest of the ingredients. So at this point, I'm gonna add in my 2 tablespoons of butter. And I gotta be honest, I don't generally measure butter. I kind of eyeball it and toss it in, because if it has a little bit too much, not gonna hurt anything. I'm probably more generous with the butter than I need to be, but I'm gonna mix that in. Okay, mixed in. The other thing I'm going to add before I add the rest of my flour is my salt, and I only need 1/4 teaspoon, which is not very much. Let's give it a shot here. Okay, 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Now, I'm going to switch to my dough hook and add the rest of my flour because I let my mixer do all the hard work of kneading the dough. I don't bother to knead it on the counter. When you have a good heavy-duty mixer like this, that's one of the beauties of working with yeast and dough is you don't have to knead it by hand. You can let your mixer do the work. It also is a lot quicker. So my dough hook is right here. Believe it or not, I think I've had my KitchenAid mixer 16 years. I'm working backwards, so you gotta forgive me here. I think that's on right. Okay. So I'm gonna add in my other 2 cups of flour, and then I'm gonna turn my mixer on. If I need to add a little more, so be it. Now, I may need to add a bit more flour or water depending on what this consistency looks like once I've got it kneaded in, but that'll just take a little bit of time for me to get a good look at it and see how it looks. You want it to be smooth, but not sticky to touch. just gonna add a little bit more flour because I can see it's still quite sticky. Just gonna test it to see. Oh, it's pretty good. It's a little sticky, but I think I'm just gonna knead it for a couple more minutes and see how it is then, because it's the kneading process that gets those binding agents to work really well. So I'm just gonna let that knead for a couple more minutes. In the meantime, I'm gonna put a pot with 3 cups of water on to boil, because in order to get that chewy texture on the outside of your pretzels, you need to dip them into boiling water with some baking soda dissolved. So I'm gonna let this mix, and I'm gonna put some boiling water on the stove, or water on the stove to boil. Okay, this looks perfect. So I'm gonna get my surface ready now to roll out my pretzels. I always used to think that I needed to have a floured surface to roll out pretzels, but I've actually found it works better to not have a floured surface, because if you flour your surface, the dough doesn't roll out as nicely. So I'm just gonna get it off the hook. Put the whole lot out onto my counter, and before I start rolling it, I'm going to divide it into 6 because we want to have 6 pretzels. So let me just see if I can find my plastic spatula. So I'm going to cut it in half, and then I'm going to cut each half into 3. Okay. It's not going to be exact, it's just an approximate, but you want to end up with 6 lumps that are about the same size. Okay. The other reason why I like this recipe isn't just because it only makes 6 pretzels, it's because it makes 6 pretzels fast. A lot of recipes I've used call for you to let your dough rise. At this stage before you roll it out, you're supposed to let it rise until it's double. For whatever reason, this recipe doesn't ask you to do that, and it works really well, which leads me to think I could probably get away with it with my other recipes, but honestly, I haven't tried it yet. So maybe that'll be next week's experiment. We'll see. Okay, so you need to make a really long roll of pretzel dough like that, and then you're going to bring it up, twist it 2 times, okay, so you get that kind of like zigzaggy, and then you bring these down, and you end up with that shape, okay? Which is your pretzel shape, and we're just gonna set that aside. I've got my 6 pretzels all rolled out and ready to go, and now it's time to dip them in the boiling water that has baking soda dissolved in it. 3 tablespoons of baking soda, 3 cups of water. I'm just gonna grab my water off the stove and bring it over to do that, and I always bake them on a cookie sheet that's either lined with parchment or a silicone baking sheet. Okie dokie. I'm just gonna lay these in there real carefully, kind of dip them in. I have also done this using actual food grade lye. It's a little trickier. You have to make sure you wear gloves and stuff, and it's a little harder, but dipping them in baking soda water has pretty much the exact same effect. Now sometimes you have to kind of fix the shape of them once you get them out of the baking soda water, because they tend to be a little misshapen. The last thing you need to do before you put them in the oven is sprinkle coarse salt on them. I just use pickling salt because it's something I have around. If you've got coarse sea salt or something else, go for it. But this is kind of the key to that really tasty recipe. Now, you can oversalt them, so be a little bit careful. Doesn't take that much. Now that the oven is preheated, we are ready to rock and roll. These bad boys are going in the oven for 8 to 10 minutes till they're golden brown. Now you may have noticed I put them in fairly close to the top of the oven. I have a convection oven, so it really doesn't matter too much where I place it in the oven because it's going to heat evenly. Ooh, check that action out. These guys look great. Hold on, I'm going to grab my oven mitts. Okay. Oh, yum. Oh, fantastic. Check that out. beautiful Bavarian pretzels. Ball Park Pretzels, so good. Oh, I just want to grab one and chomp into it, but I'm afraid they're a little too warm. So I'm gonna let them cool for a few minutes. But that's my tips and tricks on making Bavarian pretzels. Hope you love my videos and would love it if you'd subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much.